Hello everyone. In this video, you're going to learn how to use React inside the world of WordPress. So grab your caffeinated beverage of choice. Today I'm going with Bang's Blue Raz. Not a huge fan. In the last video we had Rain's White Gummy Bear. That was a lot better than this. Anyways, here's what we're going to build in this video. So you and I have been on this journey of building our own custom block type, and up until now, this is what it's looked like. You can't even click on it, right? It's just this static bit of text that says, "Hello from my cool plugin." By the end of this video, however, we're going to have something that looks like this. So I can type into this field and change its value, and I can also choose between, yes or no or true or false for this value. And just to refresh your memory of what the front end for this block type looks like, it's this Our Pets area. So I can change what the heading says. If I change this to Our Friends and click Save, notice that's what gets used as the headline text. And then this other option of true or false for show weight after pet name, if I set that to no and save this post, notice as soon as I refresh, it no longer shows their weight. So that's what we're going to learn how to set up in this video, this admin editor side where you can actually provide values, right? And have those values be stored and persisted in the database and then leveraged on the front end. So let's jump into the action. As always, the action begins by opening up our plugin folder in VS Code. If you have no idea what that means, that's okay. This video is part of a series or a playlist on my channel. The playlist, you'll find a link to it in the description, has everything you need in terms of getting up this text editor, spinning up a local dev environment for WordPress, also the basics of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP, React, so on and so forth. But that's just a bit of a warning. For the rest of this video, I'm going to assume you're already familiar with all of those things. Check out the playlist, though, if you're wanting to learn about those things. But from our folder, just in the command line, be sure to say npm start. Otherwise, as you're saving changes to your files, they will not be ready for the web browser to use. Anyways, the first thing we're going to do in our src folder is jump into this file that's named block.json. In this file, we're going to add what's called attributes to our block. Let me explain. We're going to want one attribute, and we could call it anything, pizza, unicorn, but why don't we call it like heading text or section heading or just some sort of property name that represents this little bit of content that the user can customize. And then let's have a second attribute that's just yes or no, true or false. Do you want to show the pet's weight? Right? Those are the two customizable options or values or attributes that our block needs. So in block.json, we're going to add a new property. The order doesn't matter. You could add it anywhere you want. Just so you and I are on the same page, maybe why don't we add it after, I don't know, category. So you would just say quotes, attributes, and then you have to spell it exactly correctly, colon, curly brackets. Be sure to have a comma after the curly brackets. Inside we can drop down, and now let's just spell out the first one. So quotes, why don't we call it like heading text? And I'm just making this up, but why don't you use the same thing as me just so we're on the same page. I capitalize the T in text, and then colon, set that to be an object, so curly brackets, and say quotes type. I'm not making this up. We need to say, like, is it a string of text? Is it a number? Is it a true or false value? Like, what is it? So the type is quotes string, right? The user can type in like our best friends or our animals, our pets, comma, then let's say default, and you give it a default value. So let's go with like what? I think it was our pets. At the very end of that line, let's have a comma, and then we want one more attribute. So quotes, again, you could come up with any name you want, but why don't we call it what? Show weight. And again, I capitalized the W in weight, but then colon, curly brackets. This type is going to be a Boolean, meaning it's just true or false. Those are the only appropriate answers. Comma, let's give it a default value of true. And I actually don't want to wrap that in quotes, so not a string of text that says true, just the actual JavaScript Boolean value of simply true. Let's save this file. You can go ahead and close it. And now we're going to jump in the file that's named in the src folder, edit.js. If you scroll down to the very bottom of that file, you'll see that around line number 32, we have a function called edit. And as we learned in our last video on this channel, a function like this is just a React component, right? It's returning a bit of JSX. So check it out. Let's leave this where it's sort of destructuring use block props. Let's leave that, but let's change this. So instead of a p tag, it's a div. And then you can completely empty out this line so it's like a hollowed out div. And let's just give it two things. So first of all, let's have an input. Now you'll notice my tab trigger is not working. And that's because this file ends in .js instead of JSX. I don't want to rename this file because I don't want to mess up WordPress's default script and bundling and all of that. The easiest way to fix this is in the bottom right corner of VS Code, just click on the language mode here. So where it says JavaScript, and then just change it to instead be JSX or JavaScript JSX. Now with that in place, my tab trigger should work. So inside our empty div, let's say input, hit tab, beautiful. So this will be an input field where they can type in their heading value. And then below that, let's have a select where they can choose true or false or yes or no. So select and then hit tab. I actually don't need a name or an ID for now. You can get rid of that. Inside the select though, we'll have two options. So option 1, so just option hit tab. I'll say the value of yes, but the visible is uppercase yes. And then drop down option tab. Let's go with a value of no. The visible option though is uppercase no. Cool, and then maybe right above that select, you could have like a paragraph that says show weight after pet name, question mark. Let's give this a save, and assuming you still have that task running in your command line, all you need to do is go back and refresh the admin editor side, and watch, as soon as I refresh, instead of this experience, we now see this experience. However, how do you actually like save whatever the user types into the database, and then like the next time you reload this, how do you pre-populate these values with whatever the user previously stored in the database? Now the answer to both of those questions lies back in our edit.js file on line number 32, or wherever you see, function of edit. In these parentheses right here. Currently they're empty. We want to add a parameter, and you could call it anything, but let's call it props. WordPress makes this very simple for us. Anytime WordPress calls our component function here, it's going to give it anything that it could possibly need, and we can access it from props. So now check this out. On our input, this is going to be the heading text, right? You would just say value equals, now not quotes, that would be a string of text. We want to say value equals curly brackets for something dynamic in JSX. And then we're just going to say props dot attributes dot, and we called it heading, helps if you don't have two A's, heading text. So as soon as I save that and then refresh the admin editor experience, notice that field is now pre-populated with the default value of our pets. And if we actually could save a new value into the database, it would use that instead of the default. Let me show you how to do that. How would you save the value that the user types in? Simple. On this input, we just need to give it an attribute of onChange equals curly brackets, and we just give it a function, and anytime its value changes, it's going to call that function. And then in that function, it's up to us to do something with that current value. So in these curly brackets, let's name a function that doesn't exist yet, but we'll create in like 5 seconds from now. Why don't we call it like what? Handle heading change. Okay, then let's just create a function with that matching name. So inside of our edit function, but before the return line, I would just say function and give it that exact matching name. So handle heading change, parentheses, curly brackets. Now in the body of the function here, we just want to update that attribute with the current value from this field. So remember, we said the answer lies in props. We're just going to look inside of props for something called set attributes. So I'm not making this up. This is a function that WordPress makes available to us. In these parentheses, we give it an object, and we just spell out any properties that we want to update or sort of overwrite. So we would be interested in the heading text property. So heading text, and we just want to give it a new value. What value do we want to give it? We want to extract the value from this input field. So the way that you would do that is in our function parentheses here that are currently empty, let's say E, short for event, and then let's set heading text to be e.target.value. So altogether, anytime the user types into this field, like after every keystroke, every time it changes, we're calling this function, and we're just telling WordPress, hey, the new value for this attribute of heading text, set it to this. Let's give this a save, and if you refresh, let's change this. Instead of our pets, let's have it say like best friends, and then hit save. And then you can refresh this to make sure it's persisting, and it is indeed persisting. Before we worry about bringing this show weight feature to life, let's first try to go use this value on the front end of our website, right? That's what should display here instead of the hard-coded our pets. So back in VS Code, in the src folder, we would just jump into render.php, and let's scroll down a bit to find that heading. So it looks like, yes, around line number 30, right, we see the hard-coded our pets. So to make that dynamic, just get rid of our pets. Inside the heading level 2, we'll jump into PHP. Be sure to close out of PHP. And inside PHP, let's just echo out, and then it's $attributes. I'm not making this up. This is the exact name that WordPress is going to make available to us. That's an array. So to look inside that, it's square brackets, and then quotes. What is the property name? Heading, and then we called it, uppercase text. So heading text. If I save that and refresh, there we see best friends. Now, just a quick note, if you're letting the admin or whoever's controlling this editor type that in, you're probably going to assume that they're not going to type in a malicious value. But what if they did? Like, what if they typed in, like an HTML tag like this around a word, and then you save that and refresh? Well, maybe a strong tag wasn't the best example because it's already bold. But like, what if I use an EM tag to make it italic? There you go. So you might want to let your admin user add HTML, but you're opening the door to maybe malicious code. So I want to show you how you would not allow code like that and just allow simple text values. Anytime you're letting user input content display on your front end, I would say 9 times out of 10, unless you truly trust the user that's doing that, like in this case, the owner of the website, you might trust them to output markup. But here's a good practice to get in the habit of. Instead of just directly echoing this, you could wrap it in a function called escape HTML, or it's not actually the word escape, it's ESC. So then opening parentheses there and then closing parentheses here, and then you could save that. And then if I refresh, notice it's not actually treating that now as real HTML. So this way, even if the user typed in something malicious, it's not going to actually render or place any of your visitors at risk. So that's up to you to make that decision. The only user that should ever be allowed to add real rendering code to your website is you, perhaps the owner of the website. I'll leave that escape feature in place, so let me just remove that example bit of markup in the value. Cool. At this point, let's circle back to the admin editor side and bring this show weight feature to life. Because currently we're not saving this into the database, and then we're also not like loading their existing value when you hit refresh. So how do we actually tie that in to something persistent? Let's go back into edit.js and let's find that select element. The first thing you would want to do is give it an on change equals curly brackets. Let's make up a function name. Why don't we call it like, you could choose anything, but maybe like handle weight change. And then just go create a function inside of edit with that matching name. So like function handle weight change, parentheses, curly brackets. In the parentheses, be sure to give it E. Inside the body of this function, we're going to call props.set attributes, parentheses to call that, curly brackets for an object. You only spell out the one property you're wanting to change. In our case, it is what? Show weight should now be, so colon. And we don't just want to say e.target.value because we're giving it a value of yes or no. That's not what we want to store in the database. I want to store just simply true or false. I said yes or no to improve the user experience, right? Because someone who's not into programming or coding, they probably don't want to see true or false. They probably want to see yes or no to make it more intuitive for them. So then just to sort of manage that for the value here, back up and handle weight change, I would use a ternary operator. So first you spell out the condition. So e.target.value. If that double equal signs quotes yes, then question mark, what do we want to do? Just use a value of true, colon, otherwise just use a value of false. So this is sort of an inline way in JavaScript. Instead of actually saying like if, parentheses, curly brackets, a ternary operator lets you spell out a condition, and then you have a question mark and the value you would want to return, colon, if it's not true, what value do you want to use? Cool, so that's going to save that into the database. Now, what about when you revisit this admin page? How do we highlight or like show the value that they previously set? Like what if they had set this to no? Well, on each option, you would need to say selected equals and then either true or false. Like, is this the current option that they've previously chosen? So for the yes value, I would just say inside these curly brackets, props.attributes.show weight. And then for the no option, it would just be the opposite of that. So you would say like selected equals curly brackets. And then you could just copy this value into your clipboard, paste it in, and just begin with an exclamation point. The exclamation point just takes the opposite of whatever comes after it. Cool, let's give this a save and test it out. So be sure to refresh the admin editor experience. And if we say show weight after pet name to no and hit save, let's refresh to test, like, does it persist that? Is it remembering that? Scroll down. Yes, it absolutely is. Cool. So you could set it back to yes, hit save, refresh just to prove the point. Let's put it to no. And now let's go see how to actually use that on the front end. Like, let's only display the weight after their name if that's set to yes. So let's go back into render.php and let's find the line of code where it's currently showing their weight. I believe it's around line number 39. Yes, so this would be their name, and then we have parentheses, and it's going to output their weight. So the first thing I would do to adapt this is I want the entire string of text, like including the parentheses and the LBS for pounds. I want that entire thing to be in the PHP block. So that way, like if we don't want to show their weight, we don't show any of that, sort of in one fell swoop. So what I would do is I would get rid of the opening parentheses. Now, this parentheses, again, has nothing to do with coding syntax. We're trying to literally display their weight in, visual parentheses like this. So here's what I would do. I would get rid of that opening parentheses, and then I would change the field to instead be get field. The field is going to output it or echo it for you. Get the field just gets the value, and then it's up to us to actually echo it or output it. So before that, I would just say echo, and then I would have quotes, opening parentheses, and then in PHP to concatenate something, you just have a dot or a period. So we're squishing together an opening parentheses with get field weight. And then after that, I would concatenate on, so dot, and then what? Quotes, LBS, closing parentheses. And then you could get rid of, definitely leave the PHP closing tag, but get rid of LBS closing parentheses right there. So now it's all in one PHP block. Let's save that and just make sure that's still working. Oops, looks like we're missing a space. Yes, so you'd want to include a space like that inside the quotes before LBS. Cool. So now it's looking exactly the same, but now it's very easy for us to make this conditional. So here's what I would say. At the start of the PHP block, let's just say if parentheses, and then opening curly brackets, but we don't want the closing curly brackets. Add the closing curly bracket at the very end here. So right before you would drop out of PHP like this. Here's the new closing curly brackets I just added. And now the condition would just be if $attributes, look inside that array with square brackets, single quotes, and we named it what? Show weight, and I capitalized the W in weight. So only if that is true, then output all of this. Let's save that and test it out. Oops, you can see the red underline. I've got a mistake here somewhere. I've gotten too used to JavaScript. In the world of PHP, we would need to end this statement with a semicolon before the closing curly bracket here. So after the pounds quote, just be sure to have a semicolon here. Let's give that a save and refresh. Cool. So the user set that option to no, they don't see the weight. But if we go back and set show weight after pet name to yes and click save and we refresh the front end, beautiful. Now, for a bit of extra credit, you could improve the user experience here by improving the styling with CSS, like maybe add a bit of padding, change the font size or the margin, so on and so forth. So all you would do to customize that is back in your SRC folder, this file right here called editor.scss. So currently it has a red border. Like if you didn't want that, you could set that to like a solid, you don't have to have a border at all, but this is just a quick example. And then you could give it like a bit of padding, so on and so forth. As soon as you refresh, you see that in the added editor experience. But again, this is not a video about CSS, so I'll let you do that for extra credit. Cool. That is going to bring this video to a close. To recap, we added dynamic attributes for both this heading text and the weight option. So we've now fully brought this custom block type to life. In our next video, we're going to change gears and we're going to start learning how to create our own theme in WordPress. Currently, throughout this entire series, I've been using the default 2025 theme, but what if you wanted to create your own theme? This is where dealing with the world of code truly gets fun and you become in control of your entire website, from the header down to the footer and every line of code. It should be a really fun, empowering experience. That is going to bring this video to a close. If you're enjoying this video series and you want to help support this YouTube channel, the best way is to visit my website, learnwebcode.com. You can check out my Patreon, has various perks. The number one perk is to get your name added to the closing credits of each video. There's also similar perks if you join the YouTube channel as a member. I have various courses available on a lot of different web development topics. The courses are available on both Udemy and Teachable. For web hosting, I've used DreamHost for the last 19 years. I've had great experiences. If you use my link and sign up for a hosting plan over at DreamHost, I will receive compensation for sending new users their way. That's a great way to help support this YouTube channel. You can join my email newsletter. You can follow me on various social media. That's about it. Not sure what happened to my camera there. It completely stopped working. But anyways, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching until the very end. I hope you feel like you learned something. Stay tuned for the next video. This video was made possible by my supporters on Patreon and YouTube memberships. I don't have any producers yet, but your name could go here. But I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Rodney, David, Lena's, Demetris, and Kenneth for being sponsor tier members over on Patreon. Really appreciate that support. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.